Established in 1792, Westford Academy is the oldest co-ed high school in the country, educating patriots of the American Revolution to the students of today. The piece, Westford Suite, draws from the very beginnings of Westford Academy and builds innovation upon tradition. 3 years ago, the band director, Mr. George Arsenault, contacted composer Mr. Dan Lutz to commission a piece of music that would reflect Westford's history and give back to the community. With support from the trustees, Westford Education Foundation, and the Friends Advancing Music Education, the piece was composed over the next years and premiered by the combined Westford Academy Bands on April 5th, 2018. Melodies are drawn from Westford Academy's alma mater, fight song, and the hymn Westford, from the time of the school's establishment.
We determine whether these projects are fitting and good and should be financed. And the board unanimously looked at this and said, gee, this sounds like something that's creative and exciting. So we look forward to helping to finance making this possible. Let me say that I don't know whether we as a board knew exactly what we were looking for. We were kind of hoping that it would be something with a historical perspective to it and something that was unique to Westford Academy. And having been here that evening and learning how this came together and what it was about, it did just exactly that. Exciting, rewarding. When I first came in, I saw Blair Betancourt here. Mr. Betancourt had been the music director here for years, and he came specifically. I was asked to come for that. So getting his perspective on it was exciting. When it was being introduced and it was explained where the different segments came from, being a history teacher myself and a past member of the Historical Society, going right back to Old Westford back in the 19th century and the 18th century, and getting perspective on that up until present day with the songs that you hear at football games now. And combining all of those together was really special.
I've never commissioned a piece of this caliber before, and this large. It was important to me to find the right composer, and a composer that would work with us through the entire process. Sometimes when you commission music, you're effectively allowing a composer to use some of their existing material or ideas that they've come up with, and then customize them or maybe shape them towards what you wanted. But we were more interested in finding a composer that would work from very, very early stages and build a piece, an original piece for us to play. Without a reference recording, we had to create all of our own ideas and interpretations of the music. Of course, anytime you're playing a piece of music, you're simply looking at a suggestion or a framework from a composer, and you as the artist have to truly create the music that's on the page. And that was a really challenging and exciting thing for us to do.
It is incredibly important to me that I will say first and foremost that the musicians are happy, that the players are vested in what they're playing, that they enjoy what they play, because I come from a performer standpoint. If the piece of music that I was having the opportunity to play, if it sparked me, sparked my inspiration, then I'm more vested in the work. So I write from a performer standpoint as a composer. And the tantamount to the chief musician there would be the person who affected the commission, in this case the band director, George. And so his likes and dislikes become incredibly important to me, because if the conductor is not vested in the work, then the vision will never be realized. That is the conductor's role, is to conceive the whole. I made it my mission to at least draw as a seed of inspiration for the work something that touched on the beginnings, something that touched on the growth and establishment of the traditions of Westford Academy, and then something that indicated the contemporary place that the institution is today, with its innovations and producing some of our hopefully finer minds. This is the tune that I chose to represent the beginnings, the history, the beginning of the, and entitled the first movement, history, the beginnings of the Westford Academy. The alma mater was adopted with the tune from I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day, and that piece I used as the mainstay of the second movement of this particular composition. It's an intensely strong melody. John Philip Sousa called it the finest college marching song. So it has traction, and it is one of those, call it a gold record, platinum record pop tune. Of those melodies that I just made reference to, there are portions. Very rarely are any of those melodies themselves completely stated. There are portions. Call them a motif. It could be a three-note segment, or a four-note segment, or just an interval relationship, boom, boom, and that would be developed. So it does come holistically. A lot of the work comes holistically, inspired by those melodies. But in addition to those, Mr. Arsenault did make the mistake of mentioning that he was a fan of Easter eggs. He enjoys little discoveries, little Easter eggs, so I had to include a couple of them in there. So the opening of the second movement for a little Easter egg is actually A-C-A-D-E, me, Academy, which I think he did discover that one. I had to reveal that one, but it got a good chuckle. That's where the arranger comes in, and an arranger who knows their craft understands how to highlight strengths, how to minimize weaknesses, how to get an understanding of a musician's abilities and assets, and use those to best advantage. Now, you need to understand how the ensemble interacts, how the director interacts with the ensemble, where the section's strengths are, large bodies of individuals, etc. All those factors are the arranging factors, the understanding of how musicians operate and think in assets and liabilities. The composition is the raw idea. Someplace between those two is the orchestration and assigning those colors to the appropriate portions of the ensemble. This was more percussion-laden, and it wasn't just writing parts for percussion. It was very specific, catering to the kinds of things that this particular ensemble does really well. As a musician, playing in time is one of those ever-elusive tasks, because it's hard enough to play to keep perfect time with one individual. When you multiply that by 80 people, that is every musician's nightmare. Probably the greatest asset the Westford Academy Band has is the internal sense of time is somewhat extraordinary. So I knew that I could write things that were challenging from a tempo, from a time standpoint, from a metric standpoint. I'm literally talking about the quantifiable math that's in the music. I knew that that was going to be attained to a high degree. So writing specifically for the Westford Academy, having that kind of information, I was loaded for bear. I actually had a much better sense of where the possibilities are. And I could push that envelope. This is, in some ways, it is an incredibly ambitious piece of music that I was stunned at the level of achievement. Pleased, because it does mean that I did well on the craft, but it's a testament to the performance that they're playing a piece that is at that level of development, that level of prowess. It's not average, it's not normal. This is not, unfortunately, not something that I could bring to any high school and have them do a fine job at it. It's a very specific work. It's very specific to the Westford Academy.
So we broke it into 3 movements as a suite, the first of which being history. And the history talks about the very long history that we have in Westford Academy of academics and academic excellence, over 200 years. It draws from some, I'll call it period appropriate or kind of colonial sounding textures, orchestration, with fife and drum sound, things like that, that really kind of bring you back to that late 1700s feel, using the Westford hymn, and that hymn published in the late 1700s. It's a very authentic feel from that time period. We move into the second movement with tradition, and tradition is really what we kind of stand on in Westford Academy. We have so much to look back on that we've built as a community, not just the time that we've been here, but what we've done during that time. So tradition starts to incorporate the alma mater and our Westford Academy fight song. And those are 2 pieces of music that any student that comes through our band program, really any student that comes through Westford Academy, should have some exposure to. And finally, we get to innovation, and that is where we're moving forward in the 21st century. And the third movement, innovation, has very, very abstract and unique rhythms, meter changes, metric modulations, where we're taking a ratio or a relationship between one tempo and another tempo, and we're using different rhythms to perfectly change from one tempo to the other rather than just kind of guessing. Couple that with very, very unique and difficult time signatures like 15/8, with patterns that take multiple bars to cycle over. It made for a very unique challenge and certainly very innovative in terms of what a wind band might play.